She stood at the edge of the sidewalk, tiny arms folded around a wrinkled sheet of paper that looked like it had weathered more than just her small hands. A crooked paper crown sat atop her uncombed hair, and her shoes, clearly 2 sizes too small, squeaked faintly every time she shifted her weight. The world bustled by her, cars honking, adults walking fast, phones glued to ears, none of them stopping. But she stood still, staring with big, serious eyes at the tall man who had just stepped out of a black car, adjusting his tie and glancing quickly at his Rolex. "Excuse me, mister," she said, her voice barely louder than the city's wind. He didn't hear her. Not the first time. Not until she tugged lightly at the hem of his coat and added, "I don't want your money. I just want you to come to my birthday party." That stopped him. He looked down, puzzled, probably thinking she was selling something or lost. But then she handed him the crinkled paper with the big crayon words written in shaky handwriting, "My birthday party, 3 p.m., park near the fountain, mommy will smile if you come." He read it again, and that last line pierced something in him. "Mommy's sick," the girl added, matter-of-factly, like a line she had said 100 times. "But if people come, she might smile again." She hasn't smiled much lately. The man, his name was Damon Gray, was the CEO of a major financial firm downtown. He was the kind of man whose time was guarded by assistants and schedules, not children with paper crowns. But something about the way she said it, the way she held hope like a balloon in her chest, desperate not to let it go, it struck him like thunder. Before he could respond, her tiny hand waved once, and she turned and skipped away through the crowd, leaving behind nothing but the invitation. Now, viewer, if you've ever felt like the world is moving too fast, too cold, too loud to notice the quiet cries of a child or the soft ache of a mother, stay with this story. Because what happened next will break your heart, and maybe help you believe again. Damon tucked the note into his briefcase, but his mind couldn't stop returning to the girl's words during his board meeting. Her voice haunted the edges of every spreadsheet, every proposal. He sat in his office that afternoon, overlooking the city with its glittering skyline, but all he saw was that crooked paper crown and the hope in her voice. He asked his assistant if there was a park with a fountain nearby, and she confirmed it. He should have dismissed it. People like him didn't show up to random children's birthday parties in city parks. But something deep, buried beneath years of steel and numbers, stirred inside him. That night, when he returned home to his penthouse apartment, he poured a glass of wine but left it untouched. Instead, he pulled the paper from his briefcase again and stared at the words, "Mommy will smile if you come." He set an alarm for Saturday at 2:45 p.m. Meanwhile, across the city, in a cramped apartment on the second floor of a peeling brick building, little Daisy Reynolds was decorating the living room with pieces of old fabric and torn ribbons. Her mom, Claire, sat weakly on the couch, her complexion pale, cheeks sunken from weeks of chemotherapy. She smiled as best she could when Daisy placed a plastic tiara on her lap. "You're the queen today, Mommy," Daisy said cheerfully. "Even if you can't come outside, you'll hear the music from here." Claire's heart broke a little every time Daisy smiled. She had tried to keep the sickness from her daughter, but Daisy was too smart. She'd overheard the doctor. She'd seen the hair fall out. She'd asked if Mommy would still be around for next year's birthday. Claire had lied. She didn't know the answer. Daisy had made 20 invitations from pages of her drawing book, handing them out in the streets all week. Most people just said thank you and threw them away. But she kept hoping. She told her mom, "It's okay if I only get one guest. You'll smile, right?" Claire always said yes. She would do anything to give her daughter one day of magic before the unknown swallowed them whole. When Saturday came, Daisy woke up early. She put on her brightest dress and brushed her own hair as best she could. She hugged her mom and told her to rest, then took the leftover cupcakes they had made, 10 little ones with uneven icing, and skipped to the park with a fold-out table and 2 balloons. She set it all up near the fountain, alone. At first, no one came. Children passed by with their parents, but no one stopped. Some stared at her cupcakes. One lady said, "Sorry sweetie, we're in a hurry," and kept walking. But Daisy kept smiling, even when the wind blew her balloons away. Then at exactly 3:07 p.m., the tall man in the black coat arrived. Damon stood at the edge of the grass, awkward in his suit, watching her. Daisy looked up and gasped. You came, she shouted. I told Mommy you might. And then she ran to him and hugged his legs like he was Santa Claus. Damon wasn't used to hugs, especially not from kids. But somehow, he knelt down and smiled. Of course I came, he said. You invited me. They sat together. He tried a cupcake and smiled through the lopsided frosting. They played Duck Duck Goose with no one else there, and he even let her draw a mustache on his face with a pink marker. Then Daisy asked if he would walk with her to her building, just so Mommy could see someone came. She'll smile if she sees you, Daisy said. She always says people have stopped visiting since she got sick. Damon nodded and followed. When Claire opened the door, she looked confused. A tall, well-dressed man standing beside her daughter holding half a cupcake and a balloon animal? It was surreal. But then she saw Daisy's glow and how her eyes sparkled as she shouted, Mommy, he came. And for the first time in weeks, Claire smiled. A real one. Damon's heart skipped. He introduced himself simply as a friend from the city and stayed for tea, which was just warm water and sugar cubes because they had no groceries left. But it felt richer than any dinner he'd ever had. When he left, he promised Daisy he'd visit again. Can I? He asked Claire before going. She nodded silently, tears welling in her eyes. As he stepped out into the night, something inside him shifted permanently. That little girl had no idea who he was, a man guarded by lawyers, feared by employees, worshipped by investors. And yet she had melted every wall around his heart. As he walked away, he realized, maybe this wasn't just about her. Maybe, just maybe, this was the moment that would change everything. Damon didn't sleep much that night. His thoughts kept drifting back to that dim little apartment, to Daisy's laughter, to Claire's hollow cheeks and how her eyes tried to pretend she wasn't in pain. He had spent decades drowning himself in numbers, chasing the next billion, building an empire that stretched across continents, but nothing in his portfolio had ever made him feel the way Daisy's hug had. He found himself at his office early the next morning, standing in front of the mirror with his tie half-tied, staring at a reflection that suddenly looked like a stranger. Who was he? A man with wealth, power, reach, and yet, until yesterday, completely disconnected from the very people whose lives he could actually touch. He sat down, called his executive assistant, and said something no one expected, clear my schedule for the next few days. I'm taking personal time. And then, for the first time in years, he went shopping not for stocks or properties, but for crayons, coloring books, groceries, and a new balloon pump. By noon, Damon stood at Claire's doorstep again, bags in hand. Claire opened the door cautiously, her frail body covered in a blanket. She blinked in disbelief. I didn't expect you to really come back, she whispered. Damon just smiled, holding up the bags. You didn't say I couldn't, he said. Daisy squealed with joy and pulled him inside. That afternoon, he cooked them pasta, his mother's old recipe, and they ate around a wobbly table with mismatched chairs and laughter echoing off the peeling wallpaper. Claire tried to sit upright longer, watching Daisy color next to Damon on the floor. She hadn't seen her daughter this happy in weeks. Months, maybe. You're good with her, she said softly as Damon helped Daisy make paper butterflies. I didn't think you'd know how to talk to a child. He smiled wryly. Neither did I. Days passed, and Damon kept coming back. The neighbors began to notice. At first, people whispered. Some thought he was a doctor. Others assumed Claire was his distant relative. But slowly, something even more unexpected happened. Curiosity turned into kindness. A neighbor from upstairs dropped off homemade soup. A lady from down the hall donated blankets. Someone else brought gently used books. Damon's consistent presence had done something miraculous. It reminded the building that they weren't alone. Claire's apartment became a little island of hope in a forgotten neighborhood. One evening, as Damon was leaving, Claire called after him. Why are you doing this? She asked. He turned to face her, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then he spoke, voice low. Because I forgot what life really meant. And your daughter reminded me. Claire looked down at her frail hands, then back at him. You know I'm not going to make it, right? Damon hesitated. Then he nodded. I know, he said. But Daisy doesn't need to remember that her mom was sick. She needs to remember that her mom smiled. Claire's lips trembled, and she nodded, eyes misting over. She didn't have the strength to say what she felt, but Damon saw it in her face: gratitude, sadness, and an aching, silent plea. The next day, Damon did something wild. He called the hospital and offered to cover Claire's care privately. He arranged for a home nurse. He installed a proper hospital bed in her living room. Claire protested at first, insisting it was too much, that he didn't owe them anything, but Damon silenced her gently. Let me do this. For her. Daisy was overjoyed. Her mommy wasn't going away. Not yet. Not while her new friend was around. One afternoon, Claire whispered something to Damon while Daisy was in the kitchen making lemonade. I don't want her to see me go, she said. I want her to remember love. Joy. Celebration. Not silence and pain. Damon took her hand, his own trembling. Then let's give her something unforgettable, he said. While there's still time. The very next week, Damon made calls, dozens of them. His team thought he had lost his mind. He called in favors from event planners, caterers, decorators. I want a party, he told them. Not for me. For a little girl. Make it magical. And he gave them a deadline, 1 week. Claire was too weak to get out of bed by then, but her spirit lifted as the days passed. From her window, she watched delivery trucks roll into the park across the street. A stage was set up. String lights were hung. Balloons. Music. A carousel. Damon turned the little park near the fountain into a birthday fairy tale. He invited the entire neighborhood and beyond. It wasn't just a party anymore. It was a celebration of a child's hope and a mother's last wish. On the morning of the party, Claire asked to be dressed in her favorite sweater, the one she wore when she held Daisy for the first time. I want to see her smile again, she whispered. The nurse helped her into her wheelchair. Damon wheeled her to the window, where she could see the entire park bathed in sunlight. The place was filled with laughter, bubbles, confetti. And right at the center, on a throne of pink velvet, sat Daisy, her little crown now replaced with a sparkling tiara Damon had bought her. She was radiant. When Damon joined Daisy on stage to welcome the crowd, the microphone trembled in his hand. This party is for a girl who reminded me that kindness still exists, he said. She gave me something money couldn't buy, a reason to feel human again. Her mother is a fighter. A hero. And today, we celebrate them both. The crowd erupted in cheers, many wiping tears. Then came the moment that no one expected. A white van pulled up beside the park, and 2 men gently wheeled Claire out on a portable hospital bed, surrounded by flowers. She wore soft makeup, her eyes glowing faintly. Damon had arranged for her to be present safely. When Daisy saw her mother arriving, she ran to her and hugged her tighter than ever before. You came. You really came, she cried. Claire nodded slowly, whispering, I told you. I'd smile if he came. And now everyone's here. They spent hours in the sun that day. Dancing. Laughing. Living. Claire smiled more in those hours than she had in the last year combined. People brought gifts. A local choir performed. And as the sun dipped below the skyline, fireworks lit the air, not loud, but soft colors that painted the sky with warmth. That night, Damon carried a sleeping Daisy back to the apartment while Claire rested peacefully in her bed. He tucked Daisy in and sat beside Claire, who looked weaker but serene. You did this, she whispered. You made her last birthday with me magical. Damon shook his head. No, he replied. You did. All I did was show up. Claire passed away 2 days later. It happened quietly, in the early morning, with Daisy still asleep and the nurse holding her hand. She went peacefully, a faint smile still on her lips. When Damon arrived that morning, the nurse handed him a folded letter Claire had written for him. It read, Thank you for reminding me that love still exists in this world. My daughter will remember laughter, not loneliness. Please don't let her grow up feeling forgotten. Let her know she changed your life, because you changed mine." Damon cried harder than he ever had in his life. A week later, Damon petitioned to become Daisy's guardian. He offered her family, stability, a home. But more than that, he offered her the one thing she had always wanted: someone who wouldn't leave. Daisy now lives in a house with a garden and her very own room filled with butterflies and stars on the ceiling. And every year on her birthday, Damon throws her a party, not because he has to, but because it reminds them both that one simple invitation changed two lives forever. Sparkles, if this story touched your heart, please don't leave without showing your support. Hit the like button and subscribe to Storystorm for more real, powerful, emotional stories that will inspire you, make you cry, and remind you what really matters in life. Because sometimes, it only takes a child's voice to wake up a world sparkles.